I want to welcome you all. Thanks for coming out today. And welcome to our community outreach meeting to introduce you to and answer questions about the Southeastern Arizona Water District project. We're really happy to see so many of you here, friends and neighbors and people from the community. Come out and learn about this proposed project to bring a long-term, reliable, and affordable supply of domestic water to those of us living in rural communities and remote areas of the county. My name is John Shaver. For those of you that don't know me, I'm one of your neighbors. I grew up here in the Kansas settlement area, and was blessed to have that opportunity to stay here and raise my family in the Sulphur Springs Valley. And the opportunity to give them the same options of living rural life that I had and growing up. And the feeling of community and coming together to face challenges and enjoy the many benefits of this way of life are really precious to me. I volunteered to be part of this worthy and important effort to bring a domestic water source to our communities to allow us and the generations to come the pathway to enjoy the same opportunities I had. Over the years and decades, we, like every other community, have faced challenges to our way of life. We've faced these challenges in the past by coming together and developing solutions that are logical and sustainable. We're here together today for that same purpose, to propose a solution for one element that's vital to sustaining all life, and that's water. The group of volunteers from our community have come together and weighed options and done research and sought advice from professionals and developed what we feel is a workable, logical solution to this challenge of having that reliable, affordable, and sustainable domestic water supply for our communities. So we're here because we need your help. We want to just be clear that we want everybody's questions answered. Anybody who has questions, but we are on that time frame because we got the sheriff's department's using this building right after we are. So appreciate you keeping that in mind. We got a few housekeeping items. The bathrooms are right over here. And there's water and donuts and cookies over there and some informational sheets and things over there that you can pick up. And I also want to let you know we're filming all these outreach meetings for the purpose of posting it on the website for those who are unable to attend. And when the question and answer portion of the meeting commences, because we don't have a cordless microphone today, you can come up and stand at the microphone down here. If there's multiple people, just line up and ask the question you've got, and the board will address those things, or the engineering consultant, if it's directed at him, will answer those questions. So we just want to make sure that everybody has a chance, and if there's questions, if we run out of time, we've got more questions, we'll be here for a little bit after that till the sheriff runs us off to start their meeting. But we've got our website where you can post questions. Just feel free to reach out in any way. There's over on the table also, there's some cards that are interest cards if you want to just be kept apprised of how things are going, meeting dates, outreach meetings, etc. You're not committing to anything. It's just name, email, phone number, etc. So you can just stay up to speed with what's going on. We've got Gail Griffin was unable to be here today. She has a statement that will be read here in just a little bit. But before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and let the initial interim board of directors go ahead and introduce themselves, who they are, and so forth.
Good afternoon. Welcome, y'all. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come and learn more about the Southeast Arizona Water District. My name is Terry Berkey. I live here in Sunsites. I got involved with this effort because I talk to people almost on a monthly basis who live in the area. Either their wells have gone dry or they're giving them issues. They're starting to spit air, spit sand. And we're looking for a way to provide water to them, because many people don't have the money to drill deeper. The well drillers tell me it's $15,000 to $30,000 to go deeper, and especially if you're living on a fixed budget, that's a chunk of change. So we're just looking to try to provide a way to essentially extend city water out to people living in the country, so they can continue to enjoy that rural way of life that so many people like. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Courtney Adcock. I live over in Sunsites. I'm a semi-new resident to the Valley, though I've lived in Arizona for the last 15 years. And moved out here with my husband a few years ago and bought an off-grid property. So we're run on solar. We were hauling water up until last year when we saved up enough to put in a well. But a number of my neighbors do not have the money to put in a well, or we know people who have already moved out of our neighborhood because of the water situation. Water is very important. No one should have to wake up in the morning and wonder if they're going to have clean drinking water. And that's why I'm volunteering to be part of this, is to hopefully find a way to get as many people in this valley clean drinking water, no matter what happens in the future. I don't know if we'll request. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Zamora. I was born in Douglas. I was raised in Elfrida, and I grew up working for different farmers in that area all my life. I was lucky enough to get started farming on my own many years ago. But over the years, I have noticed that over the last 30 years or so, that the water has been declining. So a lot of my rural neighbors have struggled to have access to a reliable source of water for domestic water use. So when I heard about this project, I was kind of excited and I wanted to be part of it. So this is a way to do that, I think. But thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Gary Fair. I've been in the valley for 7 years. I work for Riverview, which basically we're an employee-owned, majority employee-owned partnership. We've been in ag for roughly 80 years. I mean, we don't feel we're corporate. We sometimes get that, but we're a group of people working together. I mean, basically we came here because there was several farms for sale. And for the productivity of raising forage here, there's just the agriculture productivity of this valley is very good. You know, typically when we buy a farm, we'll look at it. When we do buy a farm, we tend to retool it. And typically the wells are, need to be redone, and we try to do cleanup, and we basically are focused on how do we reduce the water usage. And for me, being interested here, it's like more of a personal story. From our well, me and Sandy's well went dry in 2018. So we worked together with my dad. We drilled a well at his place, ran a half-a-mile pipe to our place. Since then we ran another half-a-mile to our neighbor Miguel, and last year we ran a half-a-mile pipe to my uncle Cork's house. So we drilled one well and tied us four together. So for me, it was like when I heard about it, I thought, I definitely am interested in trying to. How do we collaborate? How do we try to help?
Thank you. Next we have Bruce Jennings. He's from DGR. I'll let him introduce himself. He's going to give a presentation on the engineering side of this potential project.
Thank you, Don. My name is Bruce Jennings. I'm with DGR Engineering. Our engineering firm has worked with development and design of these types of water systems, domestic water systems for regional areas for the last 50 years or so. So I want to give you a little concept of what a regional water system is and how it works. We'll talk a little bit about what conceptually is proposed here in Cochise County, what that may cost, and how each of you might want to participate in that. This is a map of the regional water clients that DGR currently works with. That map is Iowa and Minnesota on the right, South Dakota in the middle, and part of Montana on the upper left. And the colored spaces there are typical of our clients that we work on regional systems. You can kind of get an idea from that map and from this map of South Dakota of the size of the water systems that we work with. Some are basically part of one county, some grow into a group of several counties in size. Depends a lot on how the system is developed, what the water source capability is, and what the geography of the area is. It isn't just South Dakota and the adjacent states. This is a picture of Kansas, for example, where you can see that those water systems are kind of filled in, at least in the eastern two-thirds of Kansas. Typically a little smaller system there. Those systems mostly were developed in the 60s rather than the 70s and 80s. But similar situation to what you have here in Cochise County. If you look at the size of water system that's involved, we put together this chart of our clients relative to the number of meters that are served on a system and the number of miles of pipeline. You can see that the Cochise County area that we're looking at for this system is about in the middle in terms of number of customers that would be potential customers in your case. But it's pretty much on the low end in terms of miles of pipe. The reason for that is that in your area, with the rural residences that you have, the number of connections that we can serve per mile of pipeline is quite a bit lower, more connections per mile, lesser number of miles, and consequently can be a more economical system. So when we do regional water construction, to give you an idea of what the system might look like, we design for residential needs. It's a domestic water system, so we're talking household water, things that you would currently use your water for with a rural residence or a small acreage, not industrial water, not factories, not large livestock operations. There is typically not a fire protection factor built into rural systems. Most municipal systems where they have a water tower or some water storage and larger diameter pipe will have fire hydrants on the corner of every block. Just for technical reasons in terms of getting that amount of water that it takes to fight a fire across the landscape, tens or hundreds of miles, it just isn't economical to do fire protection with a rural water system. We have thousands of feet between customers rather than hundreds of feet like you would have in a municipal system. And consequently, we use generally smaller diameter pipe. A municipal system these days mostly is 8-inch and larger pipes. In a rural system, we use some large pipe to get water to major areas, but most of the main pipeline is 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch size. Some pictures of construction. These are various construction methods for pipeline installation, whether that's a trencher or excavator or a plow. Some more pictures of pipeline there. We'll have water tanks for operation of the system. Typically we use these kind of bolted or welded or concrete steel or concrete tanks on hills is a more economical way to do that water storage. You want the water storage at a higher elevation. That's where water towers come from, is if there's not a higher elevation ground-wise available, then we put up an elevated tank on the stem like that one. That's more expensive to do it that way. Pumping stations to move the water around from the water source to the consumers and to the storage. And typically the systems that we work with use wells for a water source. We have a few systems that are on the Missouri River that have a surface water source, but most are wells. So that's a little summary of what the system looks like. It's a water source. It's pumping to get it to water storage, and it's pipeline to get from the water storage to the individual customers. So why did these systems happen? Why have we been working in this field all these years? People need water in their homes. That's a requirement to have a family life. So the main reason is that you have a reliable supply of water that's always available. In the region that we work, they have the same kind of well problems that you do in terms of water levels or deteriorating wells. They also have a pretty significant water quality problem. So they need water always available. You have, with a water system, you have your trained and certified professional staff working with the water system on a daily basis. So they're keeping track of whether the wells are working, keeping track of whether the water is flowing, and making sure that it gets to your tap, rather than you having to wonder if the well's going to hold out every day. Often we can provide a better water quality than the customers have with a source on their own site. There are rules that are followed by the various water systems, similar to what the rules would be for your existing community systems, whether that be in a municipality or in a town, or whether it's some of the community systems that are in the state. The capital cost for consumers is typically less. Courtney mentioned that they had to drill a well on their acreage, so their upfront cost was significantly more than you would have with this type of a system. Of course, you trade that for a monthly bill. And the summary is that it's just better reliability to give you water service in your home. For this water system, the Southeastern Arizona Water District in Cochise County, we at our firm took a look at what the potential was for homes here that had potentially a need for water, and what kind of a system would be required to do that, just to give the people working on development here an idea of the magnitude of project that would be required. So looking at the boundary that we show on the map there, that runs from Wilcox on down south to south of Elfrida, designing for domestic use, we found that there's 2,360 rural residences that are on the map and that are in the county database as a rural residence. There's also 7,700 vacant parcels. I'm sure you're all aware that the county was divided up into small lots a number of years ago. So those are all a place where there potentially could be a home, I suppose. To connect all that up, we ended up with some over 300 miles of pipeline required, serving a 450 square mile land area. It's our expectation that those initial customers, that potential of 2,000 plus initial customers, could be served by 2 wells in this area. The initial layout that we looked at had 2 reservoirs and then several pumping stations to get water to some of the higher elevations. So that's not a design, that's not a fixed facility plan, but it's a concept that gives us an idea of just what magnitude of project would be required here. To develop a water system in Arizona, the administrative preferred choice to do that is to use a member-governed water utility district, domestic water users district. Those are established by a petition to the county commission, and the petition names an initial board of directors of the local people that are residents of that project area. The board then has the responsibility to set up policies for the district and hire a manager or somebody to run it, to set the budgets and the rates, plan the construction, hire people to do the planning and do the construction. And then the board is responsible for the ongoing operation of the water system. So they monitor the system. If there's improvements that are needed, they would review those and approve them. And they have monthly or quarterly public meetings that the membership can attend and participate in. So the district is established by a petition to the county, but ultimately the county has little, if any, active role in the way the water system is run. For operation then, the policies and the vision of the water system and how it works is set by the directors, but they hire a staff to run it. Not unlike the school district where you have the school board that sets the policies and the direction for the district, but they hire a superintendent and administration to operate the district. It's similar to that. So the directors set the budget and set up the objectives for the year, and then the staff operates the system, does the daily work, monitors the wells, makes sure the water is meeting all the standards that are required. The staff are the people that are licensed to be water system operators by the state. They're the ones that you call if you notice that there's an issue with your water service, and they're the ones that come out and talk to you about how the operation is done. How do you get one of these systems funded and built? There is a considerable upfront cost for construction. The USDA, through the federal government, has a program for water and wastewater construction that is applicable to this type of system. We have used USDA funding for literally hundreds of projects, I guess, on dozens of rural water systems throughout the years. The USDA program has a kind of a graduated scale of grant eligibility that's based on household income in your area. This area looks to be eligible for up to 55% grant from USDA for construction, and then they offer low-interest, long-term loans that allow you to pay for the system with member revenue from water bills over a 34-year period. So that's kind of the primary vehicle for water system funding. There is also a state loan and grant program that may be applicable, and in some cases we see donations from other organizations toward the development of the system. So ultimately then, once you develop the system, get a construction loan to pay for it, then down the road that loan needs to be paid off, and that's where we get 2 monthly water bills. So the water bills are collected, you have a meter at your location, and every month you get a bill. We'll have a monthly minimum that is mostly oriented toward debt service and paying off that loan. But then there is also a water charge that pays for the operation of the system, the pumping costs, the treatment costs, etc. If we look at the way the budget works out in Cochise County for this project, it looks like it's going to be around a $50 monthly bill for the service, and then an additional water charge to the extent that if you're a typical household using 2,000 to 4,000 or 5,000 gallons per month of water, you're probably going to end up with a $70 to $95 a month water bill. And you know what that water bill is controlled by the upfront costs of the construction, by the amount of grant percentage that you get into the project, and that's where the funding agencies have some control over how much that monthly minimum will be based on how much grant they put into the project. And then finally, you have an operating cost that's an operating organization that's controlled by your local elected board of directors, and they set the budgets to do that. So how do you get from start to turning on your faucet in the kitchen? Somebody has to come up with an idea for the project, and the committee members that you see here, along with some others in the community, invited us to look at the concept of this project. We visited with them at a number of meetings just to give them a familiarity with how the projects work. We had some input from the Arizona USDA and from the state as to how that would work, and came up with a concept that has resulted in the map that you saw and the idea for this project. From there, you need to move toward a formal organization and an entity that can build this project and get it done. And the steps to that are in the purple is where we're at right now. We have this developmental steering committee, and we're doing these public information meetings. The purpose of the meetings is to give you an idea of what the project is and to determine whether there is interest in the community and people would like for this project to move forward. Once we get that level of interest, and the board is going to ask you to fill out a form that indicates your interest and gives us an idea of where you're at, so we know who wants water where. We'll put together a little more detailed study and report back to the board on what the cost is going to be, what the funding availability might be, and try to tighten up on that estimate of what the project cost per consumer and what your monthly bill might be. Because everybody understands that you don't want to make a commitment to be part of a water project until you know what it's going to cost. So once we get that information together, then this organization will move from a review committee, a planning committee, to an actual domestic water district under the laws of Arizona. So the board has a form for you to fill out here tonight that indicates your interest. Is not a commitment to do anything, indicates your interest so that we can analyze the system and see what kind of a project might turn out. Then they'll be back to you with better information on the project that is planned, and if it is feasible, to ask you to join a water district and actually formally petition the county commission to create a water district. So that's the step that we're at there in purple. We'll do that study and then come back to do the final sign-up and final design for not only forming the district, but planning where the facilities will be built. Then you do construction and move on to operation. So there's an example of the form. We have forms in the back, and we can work on helping you to fill those out. It's really name and address and location and an indication of whether you're interested in water. We have 2 blanks on the form there. You can indicate an interest in immediately taking water service, or you can indicate an interest in having the water system built pipeline to your location. But if you have an existing well that you're happy with, you wouldn't necessarily have to start buying the water initially. You'd have the monthly minimum, but you wouldn't be paying for the water. But you'd have water there, so if something went wrong with your well or you had a need for it, it'd be there and you could go. So let's finish with Gail's statement, John, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. We'll get it covered.
Okay. So we're going to ask Steve Adcock to come up, and Gail wasn't able to be here, but she did prepare a short statement, and Steve's going to read that for us.
Friends and neighbors, I appreciate that you are meeting to try to solve some of the water concerns and issues in your community. As many of you know, I've been working on the water issues we face in our communities and state for many years. And I've come to know the needs and concerns facing rural Arizona. We live in a time where water has become a top priority for property owners and lawmakers, especially when it comes to safe and reliable water for our communities. I applaud the efforts being undertaken by you to meet and discuss the community's need for safe and reliable long-term water service. I've been at some of the formation meetings for the Southeastern Arizona Water District and understand the complexities with regard to developing a water district that is able to provide the needed water for the many thousands of residents in the area. Furthermore, I have visited with residents who have drilled or are drilling wells and understand the incredible costs associated with those ventures. I would encourage you to continue in your discussions exploring the Southeastern Arizona Water District as a viable solution for the delivery of safe and reliable water into the future. I look forward to seeing you at future meetings and wish you the best in 2022.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, so we've had a number of questions from the public on our website, in person, etc. And so we thought before we get started with these questions at the mic, we would go ahead and let the board address the top 5 frequently asked questions that we've had come in. And so we'll go ahead and start here with Terry.
So one question that has come up frequently, is this a public or private entity that we're proposing? And this will be a public entity, a division of the state of Arizona, similar to the local school board. It'll be local people, running it, elected by local people, accountable to local people, that will control it. The state will have some oversight, just like they do over school boards, but it'll be pretty much a locally run and locally accountable operation.
Another question we've gotten quite often is how is this project related to the petition to put on the ballot for 2022 the motion to create an active management area, or the AMA? Does the board support the AMA, and will an AMA affect us? So the AMA is a completely separate initiative being discussed in the area. We are not affiliated in any way with the AMA, and the board is neutral as to whether residents should support the AMA. The AMA is seeking to limit water usage in the area. What we're trying to do is provide drinking water, safe, reliable, affordable drinking water to any resident in the area who wants it, no matter what happens in the future. So regardless of what the future brings, being able to provide drinking water for everyone. If the AMA were to pass, it would set annual requirements for all municipal water providers, so Clear Springs here in Sunsites, Elfrida Water District, and us if we are a water district. But we do not think it would impose any limitations on the users in the water district.
Another question is, why is the cost estimate so high with this project as compared to, for example, the Elfrida Water District? And the greatest expense for one of these new water systems is obviously the initial construction and the initial installation cost. The price of material today obviously are much higher than they were many, many years ago when, you know, a different district like, say, Elfrida was put in. For example, you know, today the price of plastic pipe is, you know, it's gone up like 3 times or threefold in the last few years. So systems like the one in Elfrida were established many years ago and had a lot lower installation costs and have been paid for over the years. So once their installation costs are paid for, their main expense going forward is just operating costs. And therefore, the water that they, you know, the amount of money that they charge for their water is a lot lower than we would have to charge. So having to pay for initial construction costs makes this water initially much more expensive. Also, but as time goes on and we do get paid, start to pay for this project, you know, the price of water should go down accordingly. Also with this project, funds will be set aside and will be available for unexpected expenses, like future breakdowns of the pumping system, you know, broken pipes and etc. So these are the basic main reasons why this project will have higher costs initially versus other long established water districts.
The 2 questions I had was, how are board members chosen, and why do farmers care? On the how are board members chosen, basically it started a group, there was a group got together, we discussed, you know, we just talked about water in general, and they kind of concluded to put it in 2 pieces. We have the ag water, you know, and that group's working through their challenges, and then we have, you know, residential water. And so that's kind of how it started in the group. We decided, a group of us decided how can we work and focus on residential, and that's what basically we're showing here. So, and we're also just intern. I mean, we just, you know, we're looking for help. All of us here, we're just helping. So, I mean, if anybody has interest, please, you know, let us know. And why do farmers care? I mean, basically for us, it's like farming is a big part of this valley. I mean, and you're all our neighbors. For me personally, I'm in farming, so we're neighbors. I mean, our grandkids go to the same schools, or we go to the same restaurants, we support the same businesses. I mean, and we help each other. For us, like the last 7 years, like you have helped us immensely. We get calls of encouragement, and we've gotten calls of admonishment. And we've needed both. And that has helped us immensely. And I mean, we appreciate that. And that is like, and you know, to me, that's been going on in this valley the last 100 years, and for us, we feel it can go on for the next 100 years. You know, somehow we need to work together. Somebody's going to farm in this valley, And we feel we have the right group of farmers, we have the right group of residents. We feel it's a good opportunity that we can coexist together and help each other.
Another question we got was, will the wells drilled by the water district continue to pull down the water level in the valley? From what we're hearing from the engineers and what we think makes sense is, we don't think so. We think it'll be more or less a one-to-one exchange. As rural residents connect to the water district and stop using their own personal well, their water usage will probably continue more or less the same. So it'll be a one-to-one exchange. We don't think that the wells drilled by the water district will accelerate the decline of the groundwater in the valley.
Okay, Bruce, did you want to bring that microphone over here? Okay, anyone who has questions for the board or for Bruce, please come up here. We want everybody to be able to hear the question, and then that way everybody can get the benefit of the answer as well.
Okay, I'm gonna get up here first. That's okay. I think it's fine now. Can you hear me okay? I'll take off my mask. Now can you hear me? Okay. I just thought, I watched the meeting that happened over at Elfrida, and a man got up and talked, and he upset me quite deeply. I don't know how many of you know Mr. Furr and his family. We live next door to them, and when they were coming to look at the different properties to buy the dairy, our well had already gone dry, and so had a lot of other wells in the valley. He did not cause your wells to go dry. Yes, he dug deeper so that he could make sure he had water to do what he needed to do to supply his business and his family. But in the meantime, he saw my husband and I. My husband had cancer and was in a lot of pain. He saw us trying to drill our well by hand, the old-fashioned way. And him and his father came up to us and said, "This isn't going to work. We're going to supply you water." They put in a line, oh gosh, it must be at least 40 acres, maybe 80 acres across to our house, and supplied our water. Not once have they asked for money to help pay for it. Then, knowing that we were on a dirt road back off the main road and we could not get out to get my husband his cancer treatments, they brought in gravel and gravelled our road. They didn't have to do any of this. They weren't expecting anything back from it. They care about this valley and what they have done since they have moved in here. When it rains, I don't see them. Sometimes the sprayers keep going, but usually they have some kind of a sensor. I don't know how they do it. I don't know much about that type of farming. But the sensor turns off. When the previous owner of the dairy had it, that water went 24/7. It did not turn off. He didn't care. He didn't care about the smell. They've done everything they can to keep the smell down, to recycle everything. And I just feel bad that so many people are blaming them for their wells going dry. There were 2 earthquakes 50 miles from this valley over the hill. And when the first one happened, not much happened with us, but when the second one happened, these wells were put in, a lot of them, I'm sorry I shake, I have tremors. These wells were put in probably in the 1950s, 80 years ago, some of them 100 years ago, some of them not so much. But the casings on them cracked. And that's where our water probably went. The casing to our well cracked and fell in. So even though we were trying to pump it by hand, we kept hitting something that was preventing us from getting our pump down in there. And eventually, the water just kept draining out. And I talked to another man who said that when they went in with the camera, that's what had happened to his well after that earthquake. So you don't know why your well has really gone dry, except for, yes, the water level has fallen. The aquifers are not what they used to be. It's life, and that's what happens. But I just don't like seeing you blame other people. And I also would like to ask, I don't know if Mr. Furr's representing all the ranchers in the area, all the farmers, all the crop places. I don't know if there's anybody here from the pecan farm. I don't see Warren Buffett sitting up there, and his sons are really invested into this area. You know, I'm just wondering if they have been contacted, if they're even interested or anything. But I would like to thank these 4 people for volunteering their time and taking the negative comments that they get from everybody. Thank you.
Hi, we're somewhat new to the area. We did some investigation before we purchased our home, looking at the different utilities and how they were handled and average monthlies. We are a 2-person, disabled and senior home. Why on earth do I want to subsidize people who choose to purchase properties or inherit them with wells? Why do I want to subsidize their costs? Okay, right now, our last monthly water bill was okay, we'll put it this way, under $50 for 2 people, okay? And they're saying that the minimum was going to be 50 or adjusted. Why do I want to pay more? This is crap.
Excuse me, ma'am, before you go back, are you here in Sunsites? Are you part of Clear Springs?
I own a home in Pierce.
Oh, okay. So this is only for residents who currently do not have water. If you are part of the Clear Springs company, or Elfrida Water District, or Sunsites Water District, this does not affect you at all. You will have no monthly bills. It will not change your water use or your costs at all. This is only for people who do not currently have water who would like water, and it will only be paid for by the same people, the people who currently do not have water and would like water. So it should not affect your bills at all.
Was that information made to other people, or is this just, you know?
I don't.
Okay.
It's on the website. The only way the water district can charge is to the people in their own district, and we cannot actually go into the areas that other water districts or water companies.
Okay, that was not made known to me.
Okay. I will make sure this question gets put on the website. As a note, the website has all the questions we've been asked and the answers. So if you would like to see other questions that are asked, they'll be there. But I'll make sure I put that on the website. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sonia Dasho. I ranch here in Pierce, and we own Sierra Lumber in Wilcox. My question actually tagged right on to that about the existing water districts. If someone is surrounded by or existing water district blocks, if you will, where this water district is, are you going to be able to get a right of way across there to be able to reach that parcel that is surrounded by an existing water district? And it's my understanding existing water districts can become a user of this proposed water district, and would that then help those smaller water districts like Elfrida or Clear Springs expand their own infrastructure?
Thank you for that question. The existing water districts, well, there's 2 things. There's water districts, which are the governmental entity like Elfrida is, and then there are water corporations like Clear Springs. Each of those has a service area that has been established with the state, and that is their exclusive service area for water service. So when we looked at the map and came up with the concept of the southeastern Arizona system, we excluded those areas. That some of those areas are not completely served. You know, Clear Springs has service area that they don't provide water service in. We hope to, as this progresses, work out with them how that might be addressed. But currently, this proposed system has a boundary that goes around those existing systems. So those consumers that are within that old boundary and within one of those older systems are not included in
Right.
this system.
But for example, where my house is, we're not in the system, but we're surrounded by it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's another challenge that we'll have to work on. We didn't look at those islands in there, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. And our hope is that we can work with those existing systems. If they have potential consumers in their area that are outside their financial capability to serve, then hopefully they would yield that area to this new district and make that work. So the second part of your question as to water supply, where we have worked with systems like this in the past, if there is an existing water system there who have an issue with water source, whether that's an old well that's going bad or a well that doesn't have enough capacity, whatever, then the regional system can come in and provide them with a bulk service of some kind that maybe enables them to do something more than they've been able to in the past. Yep.
Thank you. And quickly, just to comment up to your question, if farmers and ranchers are represented and interested, I'm the Cochise County Farm Bureau president. We are very interested in this project and very supportive because we see you all are our neighbors, and we want you to be able to have drinking water.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Berger. I was born in Arizona 80 years ago. And from my earliest memories, water was always the issue, and the fact that the population and agriculture were growing more quickly, that it would be possible for the Southwest to replenish aquifers. So my first question, I've got two questions. My first one is, do we know within the aquifers here in the Sulphur Valley, what percentage of water is being used for residential and what percentage of water is being taken for agriculture?
Good question.
We have a state hydrologist who is helping us on this project, Chuck Dickens, I think, right? Is that name? He's not here right now, but he did draw up a report that we have on our website, as well as is available for us to ask him questions. I do not think he has that exact. He talks about agriculture versus residential in the report. I don't know if he has percentages. I don't remember. It's been a while.
I can answer that. I can answer that.
Okay, well, I read lips more than I hear.
Go ahead and ask your second question.
Okay, another question, and again, I'm hard of hearing, and I think maybe you addressed this before. What's the relationship going to be between this project and the private water companies, the purple areas in this map? Did you answer that before?
Yeah, what the relationship is going to be with the private water companies is currently uncertain. This board plans to cooperate with them to, the ultimate objective is for any resident in the area to have affordable water. So, the way we drew the boundaries on the proposed map now, we specifically excluded those existing company areas because we don't have an agreement with them. The board here really isn't in a position to go to them and work with them without having knowledge of what might happen external to their boundaries. But we do have a commitment to go work with them and figure it out so that you have a private water company involved that may have a somewhat different motive, but in general, everybody wants to make sure that everybody has access to adequate quality water. So the idea is to work cooperatively with them and make that happen, however that might work out. And that's happened on the other systems that you saw that we worked with. There's existing water systems within all of those, and some of them interconnect, some of them buy water in one direction, some of them sell water the other direction. It generally can be worked out to everybody's benefit.
Okay, now, I'd like to make a comment. I was born in Phoenix, raised in Phoenix, and had family members that farmed, so we watched how the wells got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I have had as a career an agronomist. I've been an agronomist primarily in North Africa and the Middle East to deal where you have limited water and sodium problems. And I have a lot of experience from those areas. So if there are any farmers that would be interested in hearing some of what we did to reduce water consumption by plants through a fertilizer program, and also to control sodium salinity, if that's a problem in any areas. And I'm retired now, but I'm glad, I'd be delighted to share some of those experiences, because we had very, very good success in greater water efficiency in places like Egypt and Tunisia and Saudi Arabia and, you know, those kind of countries. So if anybody's interested, give me a holler.
Can you hear me okay? No. First of all, to answer Jim's question, he asked, what's the percentage of agricultural water? And when we talk about water, we're going to talk about the Wilcox Basin. Some of this water district extends into the Douglas Basin, south of us, and Sunsites area, south of Sunsites, down towards McNeil. But in the Wilcox Basin, it's very simple. You don't need a hydrologist to get this information. You guys need to read up on this stuff. Go to the Arizona Department of Water Resources. They have an excellent report from 2018 on the hydrological status of the Wilcox Basin. So right now, in the Wilcox Basin, the domestic water users use less than 1.5% of all the water being pulled out of the groundwater basin. There's another 2% that's being used by guess who? Any guesses?
Colorado.
Not out of state. Something you see every day when you look to the north. Some here. The power plant. So 1.5%. All the domestic water use 1.5%. Power plant 2%. Agriculture 96.5%. And I venture to guess that number is even higher today, because those numbers come from 2014 data. There's an elephant in the room here that no one's talking about. And that's the fact that the only reason we're here today is because our water table is drawing, and the only reason it's drawing down deeper and deeper, and the biggest single reason that water table is drawing down is because of agricultural pumping. That same Arizona Department of Water Resources report gives detailed data on how much water is going into the water basin, which is called recharge, and how much is being pulled out. Agricultural use alone is pulling out 4 times more water than is going in. Water levels in my area, I live in the Wilcox, in the Ironwood and Wilcox Road area. Water levels are dropping 5 to 6 feet a year. I had to deepen my well about 8 years ago. After only 15 years of use, and contrary to one of the early speakers, and our illustrious county supervisor, my well was not dug, our well was not dug shallow, and had nothing to do with earthquakes. It dried up because of the 2 center pivots right next door to me. And lo and behold, guess what just happened? They planted 80 acres of pistachio trees a quarter mile from my well. Another 80 acres to be put on. If you live in that Ironwood Wilcox Road area, you'll see that. Here's a statistic that they can't deny. My wife and I bought land here and started living here part-time in 1998, 99. When we moved here, we looked at the water situation. The amount of water pulled out of the ground then, through all of agriculture and domestic use, was about 120,000 acre-feet a year. Guess what it is today? it's 225, roughly 225,000. I'm doing a little bit of extrapolating, but 225,000. That's an 83% increase. So for someone to say it's natural that the water table is dropping, yes, we're in a drought, recharge is probably down, but the main culprit for it to drop that much, think about it. I mean, the elephant in the room is the use by agriculture. We all know that. And so when I had to deepen my well in 2013, and I wish, Gary, you were my neighbor because you would have helped me pay for it, I guess. And I got to tell you, this is nothing personal. I'm sure you're a very good man, very decent, and what you did for your neighbor was great. And I will say, but I'm going to say something, you probably won't like it, but neighborliness is one of the values we have in this valley. We live in a rural area. I used to live in the city. I lived in Phoenix for 38 years. You can imagine. We had great neighbors too, trust me. But people look out for each other. And I'm going to say, good neighbors don't suck their neighbors' wells dry.
Right.
The only reason we need a water district here today is because that's substantial growth. And I know, Gary, you're in Riverview, and Fred, you're not the only players in town when it comes to ag. This has been going on for a while, but the reality is, you know, the woman who talked initially said we had 70. She said, you know, we had a dairy across the street from us before. That hasn't changed. Well, beg your pardon. I mean, how many millions of dollars have you guys put into investing in the Coronado dairy and the Turkey Creek dairies? Are you willing to tell us that number? Okay. Are you willing to tell us how much water you're using daily? What's your water footprint in the valley daily? Wait, let me just say. Let me answer. It's hard to know. They won't tell us, and it's hard. It's not an easy number to calculate, but I can tell you it's such a big number you won't understand it. That was one of Gary's associates, Mr. Wolf, said in an interview with NPR out of Tucson.
Stay by the mic.
I'm sorry?
You have to stay by the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said, it was a quote in about a year and a half ago from, I believe it's Kevin Wolf, my right name, who said, the number is too big. People won't understand. I'll tell you what it is. I tell you, we estimate it somewhere, if you look at the water footprint, it's somewhere between 28 and 30 million gallons a day. Now, he can refute that, but you can look at the numbers it takes to grow corn and wheat, which I believe are their two main crops right now. And you know how much. I have a center pit right next to me. I can tell you, they're pumping out close to $2 million a day during the summer when they're pumping 24/7. That's a fact. You know how much water you're using in each of your homes every year?
Is there a question?
You're using about as much water as they pump out in about 10 minutes.
So excuse me, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We only have 4 more minutes left before we have to close, and we have 2 more people behind you.
All right, I have a question.
Okay.
I do have a question, so I'll get to the question. But I need to say that because we had a couple speakers here that I don't think really, represent the true situation. And I think Mr. Fair wants to say something. Okay. Here's the question. So, the question is, you just stated earlier on, that one of the questions you keep getting is, does the Southeast Arizona Water District Board, what's their position on AMA? And you've stated that it's neutral. I believe you said basically the same thing. You didn't oppose or support at the last meeting. So you've been consistent on that. But I do see a significant inconsistency. And the inconsistency is right on your website, right at the very top of your website. And I don't know who did this website, but if this was a group of truly concerned citizens whose wells had gone dry and really wanted to help, you would not have put some of these words on the website. And again, I think it's a very lousy PR decision on your part. But you say right up front, a tale of two visions. And the first vision says, the state of Arizona controls residential and agricultural use in Cochise County through regulation and taxation. I gotta tell you, there is no way in the state of Arizona, with our legislature and with our current laws, that we're gonna get regulation and taxation on domestic water use in this state. It's not gonna happen, as much as we'd like it to. What we are proposing with the AMA is control on agricultural use. So, but you talk about how the economy will go down because water use is going down. And then later on, you also state where you give 4 reasons why a rural water district would benefit homeowners who choose to be part of it. And let me state up front, there are people hurting out there. I know a few in the audience. I recognize a few faces. I know whose wells are run dry. They're having to haul water. And I've got neighbors who are hauling water, elderly neighbors, and it's not easy for them. So I think the water district is a great thing. I just wish we were more transparent. Because on this you say, one of the 4 reasons we should choose it is to maintain independence of the region. And you say by proactively putting a solution in place to residential water concerns, we avoid the need for the state to step in and regulate our water. No one is saying anything about coming in and regulating our domestic water. It's only agricultural reasons. So why would someone put that on that website knowing that? And knowing that this is about domestic water and not ag water. Unless it is about ag water. Thank you.
So, just a quick comment, go ahead and come out on this topic, I want to make sure you get your question in. I created the website, I have nothing to do with ag. We've been at meetings about it. In truth, the reason why we're not answering questions that have been directed towards Mr. Fair is that this meeting is a public meeting about the residential water system that we're trying to start. Some of the questions you brought up are good questions and they should be brought up and there should be discussion, but this is not necessarily the forum. This forum is trying to help people get residential water to their homes, and we'll leave it at that. Sir, why don't you let us...
I just want to ask a quick question. What kind of chemicals are anticipated to be put in with the water, like fluorine or fluoride, et cetera? And I'll sit down.
So the answer to that question is that the water source here doesn't appear to need much significant treatment, but typically we'll use chlorine for disinfection and to maintain that disinfection through the pipeline. The fluoride would be in accordance with the state regulation.
My question is, I would like to know specifically where the 2 reservoirs that you mentioned are that you're going to pipe water from, because it looks to me like Turkey Creek is dying, and it's because of what's going on here. And this is the desert, and it's not okay to kill Turkey Creek or any of the water that's coming down off these sacred mountains.
So
where are the reservoirs?
I have no idea.
Oh, you have no idea where you're getting the water?
No, the water will come from wells. The wells won't necessarily be adjacent to the reservoirs. So we have the water system that has wells that bring the water up from underground. We have pipelines then that take that water from the well site to the reservoir and the community.
Where are the 2 reservoirs that you just said?
We haven't decided where the reservoirs are.
I think she's talking about tanks.
Yes, the water tanks, and you know, it isn't just the reservoirs. We haven't decided where the wells are going to go. We haven't decided where the pumping stations are going to go, where the reservoirs are going to go, or where the pipelines are going to go. This is a process that starts with the consumers.
How did the tribes decide?
I think were you asking which aquifer,
Yes.
rather than
Specifically.
So she's asking.
Oh, you're asking about the aquifer source as compared to the water tanks?
Right. Yeah.
Both.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where specifically is this water coming from?
So the well sites have not been determined yet. We would like for the well sites to be closest to where the most consumers are. So we're doing this sign-up process to understand where there is the most interest in developing a water system. And from that interest, then we work kind of backwards toward where is the most economical and the most advantageous place to put the rest of the stuff. So to answer those kind of questions, exactly where that's coming from, et cetera, is going to have to be, into the public meetings where we know where the water's going, and then we'll be back to better describe exactly how the system is going to work.
I just know that when the first map that you put out, where it had the reservoir, that was right behind me on Turkey Creek.
Oh, sure, I understand. And
Yeah, sure. Well, Turkey Creek, the trees deserve to live, the wildlife deserves to live, and we've got to protect the sacred hoop of the Cherokee Patch.
well, thank you for that.
My name's Dennis Hagman. I want to just clarify one thing. She was saying a reservoir, you're saying tanks. Are they a tank or are they a reservoir? A reservoir open?
They will be closed.
Okay, all right. I have a couple questions and maybe a comment or two, but, so I live up on Cochise Stronghold. Let's say this water system goes in, and there's a water line that runs past my place. But I choose to, because let's say my well goes dry one day and I decide to deepen it. Is that going to prevent me from deepening it? Is there going to be a restriction against me because there's a water line out in front of my house?
Not that I understand.
Okay. So that was a question that was on my mind, because I know some areas back in Ohio do that, and they prevent people from redigging a well. I just don't want that.
Yeah, some municipalities will do that, but we haven't seen that on rural systems.
Okay. And then just a comment, I have a neighbor who's a mile away from me. They're tucked in between Summit Nut Company. They have a 400-foot well that they are starving on, and it's barely keeping up for them. They've had to add a pipe on like 2 years ago to get a little deeper. And they're still struggling now. As a matter of fact, I haven't talked to them recently, but I know not too long ago they were basically out of water. They had to put their well on a timer so they could fill their tanks. Also, if those that are profiting off of the water that is in the ground are taking it from my neighbors and myself, I feel they ought to be the ones responsible for replenishing it. Yep. My comment.
Hello. I feel that probably part of the problem that we have here is not really agriculture, and it's not domestic use. Part of the problem that we have here is we have had a governing body that has issued too many water really permits in a given area for too much water, period. And that's part of the problem that we have here. You can't have 50 water well drilling permits in a 2-mile radius. It doesn't work. So you start sucking the aquifer down. The other problem that I see with any water district is you have a governing board. If you have a governing board, who oversees the governing board? They already stated that the governing board is more or less is going to be controlled by the voters or the populace in the town. But how many boards have you seen go wrong, folks? You know, where somebody has a special interest on that board and influences that board.
So I'm not sure of the question that you're asking, but this meeting where we're talking about the Southeast Arizona Water District, the Southeast Arizona Water District will be an organization that only develops and operates this water utility. So they won't have any authority over who else is drilling or who else is using water or how that water is being used. They will be a water user, no different than a domestic well or an egg well. They will extract that water from the ground and pipe it to the various connections, but don't have any authority over who drills wells where or how much of those are pumped.
So you're not So let's say if you want to drill an investment well on your own property, you can still do it.
Absolutely, yes. It will not stop anything. People can still use their wells, they can still drill new wells, they can deepen wells. This will not, even if you're part of the water district, it will not stop you from doing any of those things.
Has anybody consulted the local water well drillers?
We've talked to a few at the beginning steering meetings as we started discussing this. We'll have to talk to a lot more if and when there's enough interest and we have to start putting together our engineering plans. And as for the board, I just want to restate, we were just volunteers from a group who had got together and wanted to figure out how to get residential water to people. There are quite a few people on this board who would rather not be on this board. We would like people to volunteer. I mean, if someone is passionate and would like to see residential water in this area and want to make sure it's done right and want to make sure the board does things for the valley and there's no side interest, please come to some of the meetings, volunteer to help with some of this. We're looking for new board members, and we would love to have other people in the community come in and be part of this.
I want to be a board member.
Just
what
if you
about
talk.
regulating farmers? What about regulating cattle?
Are you, sir? Are you done? Are you done?
Did you look at that mic? That mic is not clear at all.
Is it still working?
It's very fuzzy over here. The other two are very clear. This one is not very clear, and I appreciate it.
My name is Kurt Pike. I'm curious, in this green zone that I live in, do we have to pay $50 to $100 a month for this project even if we don't have your water?
No. It is only for people who want water. They will be the ones paying.
Because I'm pretty far out and you might not get to me for 10 years. And I can't see me paying $100 a month for 10 years and not getting any water.
So if you would like to have water, I'm pretty sure the way things are set up right now, again, this is something we're going to have to look through the engineering and you won't have to actually sign up until we know this answer. No one would pay for anything until water is at their door, is what the plan would be. So if it took 5 years to get to your property, you would be signed up, the water would be coming, but you wouldn't pay until the water got to you.
Hi, I'm Sean Moore, local here in this community, born and raised here. Water's been an issue here since long as I can remember. I see both sides of the coin. Free enterprise, because farming. I also understand that water is a precious resource. I know that this is probably not what people want to hear, but I believe this community needs this water to continue to thrive, to move forward. All the wells here are going to go dry. We can blame the dairy, we can blame Mr. Zamora, we can blame Ed Curry. He's been here probably the longest, right? But we can blame each and every one of us. We all use water, we all waste water. We've done a terrible job as a county, probably as a state, but definitely Cochise County, of regulating the use of water. I think the AMA is the meeting for that. If you want to talk about regulation, that's the place we need to go. Here, I think this is talking about surviving as a community, people that don't have deep pockets. Not fun. 30,000 when the well goes out, not good. My parents have been hauling water for 8 years. They don't have the money to drink in the hole, but it's never a guarantee, right? So I want to kind of move this in a different direction. What about taxes? You run these waters by my vacant lot that I own. The county comes, oh, sorry. When you run this water by the vacant lot that I own, the county comes by and assesses it now. My property's worth more, right? 100%. So, am I going to pay more in property taxes when you bring this water by my vacant lot?
Not directly. So there will be no taxes charged. Let me explain. Anything that raises land value in an area can and will eventually raise property taxes.
Okay.
So right now, because Californians are coming in and buying land, it is raising land values, property taxes are going to.
I get all that part.
Yeah.
And I also want my property value to go up, right? because someday I may sell it or whatever. That's good. What I want to ensure is that the farmer with the dairy, that each farmer shares in that, right? Because currently, I know how the farm ag exemption thing works, right? We're not on a level playing field. I'm all for that. I support that. I understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But there has to be some way that when my taxes go up per acre, I'm not talking per whatever it is, per acre, what my increase is, the increase needs to be incremental across the board. For each farmer, for each landowner. If I go up a penny a year per acre, then you better go up a penny a year per acre. Across the board, right? Fair is fair. You guys do have the longest straws, the biggest straws. So, how do we make sure everybody gets some of it?
I have no idea about any of this.
You know, as you pointed out, if you do have an improvement on your property, that is going to make it more valuable. If the agriculture businesses have another improvement on their property, it'll increase theirs.
Yeah, but they're exempt from the permits, right? They don't pay any of that. They can build any building on any farm in Cochise County without pulling a permit. They don't pay for themselves. They pay none of that, right? I pay the same on my 40 acres as the man across the street pays on his 1,000-acre farm. Why? Because I'm zoned residential and he's zoned agriculture. So how do they share in these expenses? When our land goes up, their land value also goes up. Why? Because the homes that they built, that again they didn't have to build a permit to build, value is increased. So if they decide to subdivide it or move it or split it, it's worth more. Why don't they pay the same amount the whole time, just like the rest of us?
And I see what you're saying. I'm a residential guy too. I'm not a farmer. I have land and a house, and my taxes are taxed residential. So this effort is not. We don't have control over what the county, how they set the rates, and how they determine that. I mean, you know, as you pointed out, this is strictly a residential.
And I get that. I just want to make sure people are all thinking the same, right?
Sure.
Second thing, I see this project moving forward. I see on paper 300 miles of pipeline, all this trench, all this work. What guarantee are you going to give the local community that we're going to use local contractors, that we're going to allow local people to bid on these projects, to work this, right? Where's the guarantee?
That's the plan. We want to keep everything as local as possible. Right now, the only planned out-of-state expenses are engineering, because we don't have engineering firms in Arizona who have done this in the near past. So we're doing that. But that is part of the reason why the board is hoping that we can get local support and local people helping us here, so that we can make sure that all of that goes through. So that is the guarantee, is our work, which I know that no one knows me. I'm new here, but I want this to be local. I love this community. That's why we moved here. We want to stay here, and we want to keep the residents here. And the people who've moved away, I'm already sad about. So if that is something that you're very passionate about, come join us and make sure it's local, because that is the best way to guarantee it.
Well, I think that part of the community, we're paying into this, right? We ought to be guaranteed some kind of, right? Not everybody wants to be part of it, but I know a lot of people want to work here and stay local.
This is for community by community, is what we're hoping for.
I just hope that's how we, because nothing I read says that, right? Everything you see here, no offense, I have nothing against you, but everybody's coming from outside, nothing's local here.
You gotta, you have to remember that we don't have, this is something that we started, a few months ago. We're thinking through all this stuff, and sometimes it seems like like you're looking to us for all these answers. We're not county assessors, we're not any of that. We're trying to do the best with what we have. You know what I mean? We're just concerned citizens just like yourself. We could use you on the board and take my place, for example. But, we don't have all the answers. We're trying to figure this thing out from the bottom all the way to the top. So, we'll work on it, and we'll try to answer every question that you have. But we sure could use your help.
So to answer your question, well, on out-of-state people, I'm here because I happened to be in the area when they were having one of the first meetings about the water system, and I know some people in the area. Construction-wise, it'll be a government loan and grant funded project, so we have to follow their rules. That requires us to put together plans and put it out for public bid, so it'll be bid publicly. The one thing that we try to do with the local board is to look at what's available in the local community in terms of contractors and their capability, and then try to tailor those contracts that we're putting out to fit the size. Mostly it's the size of the operation that can be done. We try not to bid a $40 million project that a local contractor just can't handle and then expect somebody to come in from out of state.
Nice to meet you guys, and everyone. It's a little bit of a silver lining that the water crisis here is an opportunity to meet so many good neighbors. I'm really happy about all the connections I've made as people have put their minds together to try to address these issues. It also shows a lot of the heart of the community, willingness for people to come together. And to some extent, I extend that to you guys, even though there are mixed feelings about who represents the board and some of the ideas. I would like a little bit of clarity. It's good to know that you made the website because I can direct the questions to you. The fellow before me asked that question about your tale of two visions framing. And for me, it does sound very much like your alternative to your water district. Sounds like something like an AMA. It talks about regulating water use. And so it seems like you are putting those as being in conflict with each other. So maybe you can say something about that.
So I did not write that specific part. That was part of.
Did you say who did?
No, they're not here. It was part of a steering committee, a big messaging group that we have. So I don't know exactly where all of that came from. I do know that there's been talk at the state level about regulations in Phoenix this year because of the drought, and that the residential water up there is starting to see some of the. We had it in New Jersey and I lived there. The times of day that you're not supposed to be watering your lawn, stuff like that. Yeah, and so that is something that is starting to roll out in the state of Arizona in the cities because of the Colorado River and the water management there.
Expected to go up next year too.
Yeah, and so I would expect that the reason that was written into that was because of that, because that was a big discussion we had with Bill Griffin at the start of this, is that she knew that was coming down the pipeline, and that people in Phoenix were going to start having water regulations for the first time, and they weren't going to be happy about it. So,
you can imagine it sounds different.
Yes, and actually I'm glad to get that feedback, because we had not heard any feedback like that, and we don't want to sound like we're against the AMA, because I said we're neutral, and we think the citizens should make their own decision on both, because both are trying to deal with the water issues here in the valley, and they're both being done by people here who very much care about keeping this valley here and together and alive. And so I appreciate your comments, because I think we can probably do better and make that sound better on the website.
And I appreciate your answer. On that note, I know personally, when it comes to people who are making water decisions for me, I don't, and I'm not speaking for anyone else, of course, but I wouldn't want people who are neutral about water regulation. I would want people who are addressing that problem, because it's the bigger part of the problem, and it's an inevitable problem, even with the water district. Rates of water still dropping, water district in place. It's just a temporary fix if we don't do anything about the water. To that end, what's the process, and is it going to be a transparent one about possibly having a different board of directors? I appreciate the invitation you've given for people to come up, but it doesn't give me a warm and fuzzy just that you've said that. I want to know that there's a public forum where that process of inviting the people to be on the board, to make proposals for other board members, is seen by all. We all agree you did a fair job of it, and everyone had an opportunity to weigh in and make sure that they feel represented. Another question about the website, it says that the interim board would sit for 4 years, and maybe that's changed, or?
So that is once a petition is actually formally submitted to the county. That would be that board of directors, which would then be locked in for it. They sit for 4-year terms, but it would be a rotating 4-year terms, and they'd be elected on election day. If I'm correct, please probably correct me if I'm wrong. This board is just people who volunteered to sit up here and field questions and were part of getting this all together. We're meeting a couple times a week at this point to try to work through details and everything else. So I think having a public forum for people to be board members would be great, but we would also need to see those people beforehand coming to the meetings we're having twice a week and working through all the details and working with the different...
They'll show up.
Yeah. So
how would you invite those people?
So if you are one of the people who could spare the time and the energy, because once this is actually, if and hopefully once this actually becomes a real entity, which first we need to get interest through these forms, which we're going until June, then we need to go back to the engineers and see if it's even feasible and financially feasible for this valley, and then we'll actually have to go about setting up a petition and trying to get it into a real entity with the county. If we have people come and start helping and doing all of this stuff in the meantime, I think it would be great before we actually go to do the petition to do some type of public forum with the people who have been here throughout to try to get them and get the best group of people.
It sounds great. How do you think you might go about doing that? Would it be posted on the website, an invitation for these times and dates?
Like I said, I think they would have to work throughout this whole process. So if you are interested, contact us, talk to us now, get us your information. We'll start inviting you to all of our meetings we have every week, and as long as someone's involved throughout the whole thing, then I think something like a public forum before we actually go into petition with the people who have been involved the whole time would be a great idea.
Okay, so to be clear, we are relying on you that you'll stay faithful to anyone who asks, that you're going to invite them, and only on your own conditionality will you then invite them to be part of the petition.
But there's nothing else I can do. I mean, there's no other way there's no guarantees we can
You
give.
could hold a public meeting where people discuss this, and there's a whole representative process that goes on. There are options.
Yes, but like I said, we need to make sure, so once the petition actually goes through, these are the people who are going to have to be getting the funding from the USDA, who are already meeting with finance people now to do this. They're going to have to work with the engineers. So it's, like I said, as long as people come and start working with us now, so that they know who we're working with and how the process is going, then I think a public forum would be great.
Okay. Well, I'll touch base with you personally afterwards. It looks like the only assurance I'll have is direct contact. Last question. 100 years of supplied water, 1,200 feet deep. Two things there. Those probably correlate to the adequate water supply laws. I don't think that's a mystery to probably everyone up here, but maybe you guys could tell everyone else a little bit about why those particular numbers, how that relates to Arizona water laws, in which Cochise County opted to operate under, how it relates to property, real estate, subdivisions, so that people kind of know what's going on there. And also maybe you could explain either what on that hydrology report on your website says anything about 100 years, because I don't see any kinds of numbers about the rate at which the water table is dropping, or anything that tells me 100 years. Or if you don't have that answer, you can tell me why you guys don't know. Because I want my water board directors to know exactly why they're telling me there's 100 years of water supply. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I think that you're under a misconception that this water system is ready for construction. Your question relates to studying the water supply, studying where the facilities are going to be.
What they told us, which is 100 years. They said that was their goal.
Yes.
That's what their hydrologist told them, so I want them to speak about how they know that and why that goal.
All of their responses are...
The 100 years number, I think, is just a long time. There are rules in Arizona relative to new subdivisions and water supply that have the 100-year number in it.
And 1,200 feet.
I don't think that there's a certainty that particular rule applies to this system, in that we aren't doing a subdivision. This is all the existing lots in the area. But at any rate, this board, I don't think that they've made any decisions whatsoever about this water system. You're concerned that the decision-making process is being driven somewhat in secret. There hasn't been a decision made other than deciding that we would look at basically the entire valley for the possibility of developing a system. Their role and their goal is to gather information about who in the valley might be interested in a pipeline water system and what the costs of that might be and how that might look. This is the very preliminary stage of that. There's been nothing decided about where the wells will be, nothing decided about where the facilities will be, nothing decided about where the pipeline will be, because we're working on figuring it out. And as to your concern about transparency, well, that's why they're here with you now, before any of that is decided, to get your input, to make sure that everybody understands what the concept is, to give people an opportunity to participate before any of that happens and any of those decisions get made. I don't know how they could have included you earlier in the process than they did.
Dennis, we got one more question because we're out of time.
Well, they said that they were kind of looking for suggestions, so I have a suggestion. It seems to me there's probably an ag well within a short distance of every home that's been affected by the lack of water in the bottom of their well. It seems to me too that those same people that are profiting, if they really wanted to be a neighbor and help their neighbor, get them a pipeline, put a meter on it, meter how much they're getting, and figure out percentage-wise what that adds to their electric bill, and let that person pay that. If they really, that's a suggestion. Something of that like mind or some idea like that. So, for what it's worth.
The engineering firm that's coming in that has drawn up the plans for this proposed project, who hired you? Who's paying you? Riverview. Hold on, before you answer that, I think we probably all know the answer to the question. Riverview. Have you done business with Riverview in the past? Yes, the answer is yes. That they've done business, they've done this before to different communities. While I think that this project is something the community needs anyway, ensuring groundwater, ensuring clean drinking water to all of our vulnerable residents, it's something we need regardless. But we do not let it distract you from the fact that Riverview has done this before and they are putting a Band-Aid and distracting you from the real problem that's going on. That's why the AMA is important. That's why the AMA is the only thing that's going to ensure that we have groundwater. It's not the distraction in which Riverview pays an engineering firm to come in here and say, oh, we're taking care of you. It's not taking care of you as residents. It's distracting you and putting a Band-Aid on the real problem. The 100 years of groundwater, that the term that's been thrown around, is when you have an AMA that comes in and tells you that that's what they have to do. It's not something that needs to be established without the AMA. So pay attention and don't get distracted by your neighbor helping you, because that's not what this is. This is Riverview hiring an engineering firm to come in here and perceivably do you guys a favor. That's not what they're here to do. They're here to distract you from what's really going on so they can continue to pump as much unregulated groundwater as they can until it's all gone and it's over.
To answer your question, Riverview has never paid us, ever, never, to design a domestic water system.
So who pays you? Who pays you? Why are you here? Why do you volunteer?
The committee has organized and invited us here to do some of this work.
Through Gary, no doubt.
But we have not,
Gary, no doubt. I'm sure
we have not done domestic water system work for any kind of a private, I don't know if I should say that, but this is a local effort to organize a locally sponsored, publicly voted project.
It's not out of the kindness of your heart that you're here.
I do have an interest in the community.
I want to hear her. Give her the mic.
So
She's saying the same thing to me.
So we're actually out of time, but just a quick comment. Like I said before, I think the AMA is something that's important to this valley, and I think it should be discussed. But just so you understand, if we do not get enough interest for this project by June, it may not happen, and the people who need water won't be able to get water. So that's all we're trying to do. If this doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. But if you are interested in trying to get a residential water system so that your home can have water no matter what, please fill out an interest form, and thank you very much all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.